In the Research Communication Strategy project, we've been investigating developments in scholarly communications. And this is a particularly exciting thing to be investigating at the moment because there are so many new ways in which researchers can disseminate the results of their research. We especially focused on open access to research. We knew that if we asked researchers if they were for or against open access, most of them would say they were for it. They would agree that the results of publicly funded research should be publicly available. But we also are aware that if we ask them if they do make their research open access, many or even perhaps most of them don't. So we did some research to find out how people in higher education institutions viewed the idea of open access. We talked to Pro-Vice-Chancellors for research, we talked to research directors, we talked to senior library staff, and we talked to researchers themselves to try to find out what were the drivers that made them think open access would support their institution, what were the drawbacks in their view to open access, whether they felt that open access was in fact changing the nature of scholarly communication. And we asked academic colleagues particularly if they did put their work open access, why did they? And if they didn't, why did they not? To try to see what were the cultural attitudes within institutions and within subject areas that were either forwarding or impeding the open access agenda. We also tried to be a conduit of information between colleagues in institutions, and we put on 5 events around the country for research managers, PVCs for research, senior librarians and others interested in the open access agenda. We had 4 conferences around the country talking about the cost of open access and the possible financial benefits of it to institutions. And then we had a 5th conference bringing together specifically research directors and library staff to enable them to talk to each other about ways of creating seamless workflows in their institutions and working together to improve open access and to improve the smooth dissemination of research. That conference was also addressed by funders to help research directors, particularly to understand what funders required of the researchers that were using their funding in terms of disseminating their research to the wider public. And another output from our research were 4 briefing papers written for us by experts in the field. And they address issues such as the moral case for open access, the best practice for embedding research repositories in institutions, the whole question of gold open access, in other words, submitting research to open access journals or publishing in journals that offer a hybrid open access option, and the issue of open access generally supporting research within institutions. These papers are designed to carry on the conversation, and we hope they'll be useful and interesting for some time to come.